Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, the May 17th, 2013 edition. This show is a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website, and tonight we have a twofer. I've got two guys tag teaming on me tonight. We have Richard Gaskin and Chris Miller, and they're the creators of the Chronicles of Piye, P-I-Y-E. And for those of you who want to take a look at some of their work, of course, the website is www.chroniclesofpiye, all one word, Piye.com. Let me start off with Richard. Richard is basically a digital media guy. He's a creator, writer, producer for the comic series, The Chronicles of Piye. Works in television, film, digital media, and he is a resident of our neighbor to the north. He lives in Toronto, Canada. How are you tonight, Richard?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm not bad for a guy my height. I'm a little bit too heavy for my height, but I'm doing well. So let's talk a little bit about. First of all, you're in Canada. Are you a Canadian?
Well, I was born in the UK actually, and but I would consider myself like Barbadian, Bajan as we call ourselves, from the Caribbean.
Okay.
Because you don't know about that, but that's where my family's from, and that's where I grew up before coming to Canada as a young teenager. About 18 years old actually when I came to Canada. So Canadian, yes, but those of us in the Caribbean, we always call ourselves by our, the West Indies where we come from, whether it's Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, wherever.
Mhm. So you started out in the Caribbean. You went to England, then you came to Canada. I'm sorry, I might have got it. Did I get that mixed up?
Yeah, a bit actually. I was born in the UK, England.
Oh,
then
you were
I
born
came
in
to
the
Barbados.
UK. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Came to Barbados, then I'm currently residing in Canada.
So how was the transition, coming from there and going into Canada?
A big one. It was very, very different. I got to tell you, it took a while adjusting to it. I think I had a lot more appreciation for life back in the Caribbean, back in Barbados. There were a lot of different things. I mean, Canada is a great country. North America is a great place to be. There's a lot of opportunities here that you wouldn't necessarily get down there. But there are a lot of advantages in some of these so-called third world countries that you'd be amazed, which gives you an actually better quality of life. People are warmer, the climate's better. There are quite a few things. Yeah.
I was thinking of that. I mean, just climate alone. I live in Chicago, and at my age, these winters are not something I look forward to, and
Nope.
I would definitely enjoy that weather. All right, so it sounds like you got to Canada about near the end of what would be like your high school years.
Exactly. Did 1 year of high school and then went to university.
Okay, and how did you find the people?
It's a bit of a culture shock. One thing that struck me actually was that they seemed people. I don't know. I think people in the Caribbean were more individualistic. They just seem as if everyone's got their own quirks, but we all accept each other, and they seemed a little bit more formulaic, like a little bit more the way you see people on television, I guess. That was the one thing that hit me right off the bat was, I think that somehow struck me, at least at the suburban high school I went to. That was one thing. And a bit cliquish, in a way that you don't really see in high school back there. I mean, there are always cliques, but it didn't seem as warm in some ways. Again, that's just obviously someone coming into a strange country, but in a big country as well. But yeah, there were those differences, I thought.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so now going back that far, let's talk about some of what you do now. Are you mostly into moving media, digital TV, digital media, film?
Film, television, moving into digital media, with like webisodes and stuff like that off of existing television shows that we have here in Canada.
And when did that start? I mean, how old were you when you started getting the bug for doing that kind of work? Was that something that grew out of what you learned in school, or did you pick it up later?
I picked it up later, actually. Well, I did cinema studies and 20th century British literature at U of T, so I think that's where it started to pick up. And after a few years, I got a gig as a PA production assistant, driving people around in cars, driving the director, or picking things up literally. And it just went from there, I think, over the years. And now I'm working with a company that doesn't do film so much as television. Most of the productions I worked on were productions where it was like American companies actually coming up to shoot American movies.
Sure.
And that's where I got most of the film experience from, just working in the production office mostly, not really that much on set except on maybe smaller independent productions. And now I'm sort of working more with local television production companies. They're producing most of their products for television, some of them for film, and this company in particular is starting to do a lot of digital media as well, like apps and webisodes based on existing television programs.
Sure. Now, and it does sound like you did the actual ground up thing. You started out as a PA, a production assistant, and then what gave you the impetus to learn like the skill sets for doing for doing the media and things like that? Was that something that you maybe took some classes on, or did you learn it on your own? How did that all work out?
I did some internships actually with some local Canadian producers, and just sort of worked with them. Did some volunteer stuff. Worked for free on independent film sets, and did some reading. Also joined an organization called Liaison of Independent Filmmakers of Toronto, LIFT. I haven't been there for a while. And other groups like Trinity Square Video. So it was there that I did some editing, did some camera work, worked with other people. Assistant producers, that sort of thing. And so that's how I kind of learned it and just kept it going to the point where I started working in the industry for real, quote unquote.
Right.
And then moving up through the ranks from there. I mean, actually right now what I'm hoping to do is with Chris and whoever else may join us is to actually have our own production company and to start producing our own work. I think for me that's really the next step, to start producing my own products. Chronicles of Piye, which I'm working on Chris with is the first sort of major thing that I've done. And that's, I think that's the next phase, really.
Man, that sounds great. I mean, since you brought him up, our other guest, who is your collaborative partner, Chris Miller, he's got his own website with his work on it, and his is crazyhouse.com. All one word, CHRIS, crazyhouse.com. And actually, it looks like, Chris, you've got about 10 years of experience also doing production work. Is this for drawing, illustrating?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. A little bit of mostly animation and illustration. And it's mostly for doing stuff for the web and for interactive content like mobile games and cell phones and stuff like that.
And how long ago did you get your start?
Well, I've been drawing and stuff since I was 3 years old, and I come from a semi-artistic family. Like, my father was a musician, and, after I was born, he decided to, I guess he had to get a real job and became an architect. So I kind of learned a lot from him, going to work with him on his architectural jobs and stuff like that. And from there, I kind of decided that I wanted to make art my profession, so I decided to go to school for it, and I went to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. This was back in like the late 90s, and I went there, got my degree, graduated 2 weeks after 9/11, and
and said where are all the jobs? Yeah,
exactly. I was lucky though, because I was able to find some work because I was already interning a year before I graduated.
That always helps.
So that helped me, find a job, and I, that company did go bust because, there was a lot of .coms back then. I don't know if anyone remembers, but then they, a lot of .coms, that bubble popped, and a lot of those businesses went out. So
I mean, a lot of them were built on unsustainable business models anyway.
They didn't understand what the actual medium was. I mean, everything was really so new back then. I mean, DSL was a new thing back then. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Everything was changing back then, and people. Not everyone had a cell phone just yet. So.
My first cell phone, I had to get a trailer to pull it behind my car. That's how early.
Right.
I was an early adopter. So, and where are you living now? What part of the country are you living in now?
Currently, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've lived here for about the last 5 years. For a good 10 years of my life, I lived in South Florida. And I like to say I lived there through the transitional phase where it was like right after the whole Scarface stuff, and then towards the, now it's like Miami's like a party city now where people go for spring break and whatnot. But when I was
so
there,
you were there like the height of the Miami Vice? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was like after that era towards the, when it turned into, party city where all the rappers are from now, I remember a lot of those people when they were still just underground artists like Trick Daddy and Rick Ross and Trina and whatnot. So.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's nice down there, and so do you like the Atlanta area? Will you be staying there? What do you think is going to happen?
My wife and I actually will be moving pretty soon. But, I mean, Atlanta's okay. There's some good things about it and bad things about it, and I could go on and on about both. But, like I said, it's a decent city. I like, traveling here. I like a lot of the atmosphere here. But as far as, like, I'll say the industry here, I'm not a big fan of.
Why is that?
Well, I would say it's been hard for me kind of like coming in here as an outsider, trying to find work. I've got most of the work I've had the last couple of years has been from people outside the state. Like I've been doing a lot of work for companies in California and, even outside of the country like Africa and stuff like that. So it's not, here it's been harder to find work here than, just contracting my services out to people around the country.
And where are you heading off to?
We will be moving to Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, well, you'll be seeing our illustrious admin, hopefully.
Yep.
All right. So how did the two of you meet? Richard, why don't you tell me, unless whoever's got the better story. Who's got the best story about how you two met?
Well, how did we connect? Wasn't it on that show, the blackchannel.net?
Yeah.
I think that's where I first heard about Chris.
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been. I can't. I know you contacted me like, it was back in like 2009, I think, if I'm not mistaken, like doing some work for whatever site that you had at that time.
Yeah, actually,
I did some clip art for him.
Yeah, I had an online radio station called Kemet Music Radio.
Yep.
And it was like a music radio station with different types of African and music and hip hop and that kind of stuff, sort of a mix of different things. But that's correct. I contacted Chris from hearing about him on that show, and he did some graphic arts work for me. That's right.
Yep. And that's how it is.
And so, like, was it like a quick collaborative, epiphany where the two of you, just figured you would work together, or did it take a little time to?
I think it took some time, but like I think it was that I guess we saw both in each other that we were both serious. I mean, I took him seriously when he paid on time and just paid me to do the work. There was no like homie hookup type thing going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
So that I knew he was the real deal. So.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, with me, I had mentioned it to him, and he had a similar idea about doing something like that himself. And with me, even though I didn't mention it earlier, when I was younger, like, a kid, I actually did, like, tons of comics with a cousin of mine, Michael, who was actually in the States somewhere. I don't know where he is right now, but he's in the U.S. somewhere. His wife is living with his wife right now. And it was something I thought about, and I remember mentioning it to Chris. But before I touched base with Chris about it, I actually contacted my cousin to do something like Chronicles of Piye, but he wasn't having any of that. So then I thought, well, what do I do now? Then I called Chris, and he was just, the moment I just said the idea to him, we automatically just we're all over it, and that's how we just decided, hey, we're going to work on this, we're going to do it, and it's been great working with Chris, man, because like you said earlier, this guy is serious. There was no no joking around. We got stuff done, and I worked hard, he's worked hard, and I'm really proud of the work that we got going with Chronicles at PA.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. It's like a match made in heaven. So, guys, why don't you describe, and I'm sorry for mispronouncing it, it is PA, not Pi.
I say PA only because I wrote it when I was actually in Kenya, and my wife said that's how they're, someone I was working with, a kid I was working with down there, he said that's how they're calling it, PA. And I think my wife said the same thing too, yeah. And I think that's just like, because the Swahili is their language, is a Bantu language, and I think that's how they pronounce it.
Right.
But, I don't know. Sometimes I've said Pi, sometimes I say PA. It all depends.
I can go as pretentious as you want, but in that aside, seriously, why don't you describe a little bit about it? Why don't the two of you take turns describing a little bit about what you created? I mean, what was the genesis of the idea there? See how I worked that word in there? What was the genesis of the idea, and how did you guys figure out that this was something that would take off?
Well, we didn't actually. I had this idea that I wanted to do something, a fantasy-based comic that was. At first, I had thought of doing a movie, but there's no way you can get a budget or finance for something like that. So I had this idea of doing a fantasy-based action comics, basically inspired in a sense from Japanese anime. I thought, well, these guys are using their culture and their history to sort of create this template for great, manga and anime productions. I thought, why can't we do the same? And so that was sort of my inspiration. I had wanted to do something, I think, in the Nubian sort of kingdom because I thought that had a really good history to it. And it was an era that people didn't know about, but at the same time, we didn't really want to have a history lesson. So we weren't going to take a story and try to make it into a comic. We just thought we're going to create something fictional, but put it in that setting, and come up with something that's different to what you're seeing, out there.
Right.
And
I think
really,
a big part of it was, we just realized that there's such a gap there for this genre. I mean, there's so much historical and mythology that goes on that's in Africa and ancient Africa, but no one was using it.
Right.
And no one was touching it at all. So we wanted to be the first to jump on there and get in there and do it.
About how long ago did you guys start?
This was the end of 2011, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. Yep.
That's correct.
So we're talking about a fairly short ramp-up time here.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed longer, but I mean, we spent a lot of time doing the conceptual work, before we did even any hardcore groundwork, just going back and forth and figuring out, what characters we could have and, just giving creative input and stuff like that, and talking about especially the weapons and the names and stuff like that. I know we spent a lot of time with that, so.
Yeah.
All right, and so right now the totality of the existence of this speculative world is an online creation, or do you have any spin-offs like comic books or anything like that?
Oh yes, it's a comic book series. You can get it in print or a digital format download. So
very cool.
And
both of these you could download and get it in print off of the website, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and talk about a little bit about the acceptance that you've received and maybe what measures of success that you think you've experienced.
Well, I mean, on Facebook we got over 100,000 fans. I think we've had a very favorable reaction to it from people around the world.
Right.
Some strange places like Indonesia where it seems like the fans there really like it, and from the States, from various countries, and let me think, Pakistan,
Brazil, yeah.
Brazil, a lot of South American countries actually.
Right.
Ecuador, Peru, places that we didn't really think would even know about this.
Yeah, we weren't even expecting a lot of the international acceptance that we've gotten.
Yeah.
What do you think was the driving impetus for people to find you? Because when you talk about 100,000 people, that's a considerable fan base. And then when you also talk about it being, the scope worldwide, that's a pretty envious accomplishment. What do you think drove that? How do you think people found you?
I think mostly through Facebook, and we did some advertising with just all we were doing really just putting up production stuff from the comic book and some production art and character design. So I think once people saw that and they saw that, I think what these people are seeing, they're seeing characters that they've never really seen before. They're seeing, dark-skinned fantasy characters, and that's not something that is marketed at all through Hollywood or anywhere else. Even in Japan, most of those characters, let's be honest, a lot of them look white anyway, even though they're supposed to be Japanese. So seeing this a different style of character, I think is, people are more accepting of it, and they haven't seen anything like it before.
Actually, Chris made a good point too when he said the Japanese characters actually look very Caucasian, and it's true. So probably, I think for a lot of people, they're just not used to that whole Hollywood model, and just seeing these guys come up with this whole African-centered sort of graphic novel or a comic series, I think it was just very different. And again, like what was said earlier, it's just something that they've never seen. We also made sure we tied it as well to history. So we every now and then, for example, with the weapons, we design the weapons. They're like basically they're stylized for the most part, but they're based on actual African weapons.
Yep.
So, we showed, for example, the pyramids of Sudan to say, well, look, this isn't just some fanciful creative story. It is a fantasy story, but it's definitely set in a real time and place. And so you can believe in this simply because these characters did exist, or characters like these existed back in ancient times. And I think for a lot of people, too, it was a bit of a learning experience as well.
Well, all of that sounds great. And then what kind of feedback are you getting from, let's just talk about North American black folks. Are you getting any traction with that community, or is it more your basic comic community that is embracing you maybe from the onset or early on?
Well, I've noticed it's mostly, like you said, mostly the science fiction, fantasy, a lot of, and here in North America, even though we have such access to a whole bunch of different kinds of media, there's still a big empty hole there when it comes for black characters.
Sure.
So when anyone in our community, when they see something like this, they're going to jump on it because they, it just, like I said, it doesn't exist really. They got like a few black characters in Marvel, maybe one or two in DC Comics, and and that's it. And forget about fantasy. I think maybe Conan may have had like a black sidekick every once in a while, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, for example,
go ahead.
I was going to say actually, there's a comic group, for example, where I was just trying to see like how, and it's actually mostly black people on this comic site, and I posted a few pictures of Chronicles of Piye on there, and I'm just shocked to see, except for the moderator for that comic group, the lackluster response we've been getting from a lot of those brothers on that site, and they're going on and on about these Marvel and DC heroes who are like 95% of them are Caucasian. And I just look at it and I just wonder what is going on. I mean, what are these people really doing when, you've got two brothers with a product that's obviously doing quite well, has a lot of response, and these guys are not even budging in terms of like giving it their support. So I think as well, I don't know, I think a lot of people in the community as well are really just glued into mainstream media. And they just can't budge from it. I mean, if they don't see something in mainstream media, it doesn't exist. But they don't understand. Instead of complaining about heroes not being there, just support the ones that are out. And before you know it, they will actually find the mainstream. But it's all about supporting your community and supporting those who are doing excellent work and who have made an impact. And you can help by, buying the comic or promoting the comic in whatever way.
Right.
Well, there's still a huge uphill climb in terms of non-white entertainment acceptance, and the biggest barrier, the biggest gatekeeper to non-white entertainment is the money available to produce.
Yeah.
I talk about this ad nauseum, but I mean, you look at the movies that you have out there. Look at the classic story, at least in the last few years, was, George Lucas having to self-fund Red Tails because no studio would put up the money. When you have, black characters, they have to be of a type in order to seek acceptance, and they don't want to be too strong because, you don't want to alienate, anybody. It's kind of like our president. We will never, ever, ever see Barack Obama lose his temper because then he just relegates himself to being just another angry black man. It's true. And there's a problem with his efficacy because of that. And the same thing for entertainment. If you had, let's go back to another example that I've used before. Look how people did not believe and couldn't get behind until much later the premise for the last Cosby Show. You have a black doctor and a black lawyer who married each other, had some some very normal kids, and had a very nice house, and all of these trappings of upper middle class or even semi-wealthy class, and people were complaining about, that's so unrealistic.
Yeah, they're not keeping it real. which is
it's as if everything has to be the Jeffersons, or excuse me, not the I guess the Jeffersons,
or Good Times,
or Good Times.
Yeah,
Folks coming out of my the neighborhood I hang out in here in Chicago. So there's I think that obviously you have a huge amount of success if you've got 100,000 people who are regularly checking out your product. And then I guess, if you want to dissect that and find out, well, yeah, they're into this, they're into that, most people don't have the access and don't maybe use the Internet as much to look for their entertainment as they possibly could, which would give you even more exposure. The people who are...
Well, that's a problem I've had with a lot of my fellow African Americans is that they do use the Internet to find entertainment, but it's usually the wrong types of entertainment.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
It's going to watch fight videos on World Star Hip Hop or watch pornography or something like that. So.
Yep.
BigBootyGirls.com.
Right.
Yeah. Well, also there is a glut of intellectual endeavor in America. There is a ubiquity of the dumbing down of America. Fewer and fewer people are reading. If they're reading, you look at Twitter. You look at classes now where they teach you, emoticon shorthand in order, because it's, how long is it before we start seeing LOL and that kind of nonsense in people's scholarly papers that they're trying to, a term paper. So, it's tough. And if you guys are putting out very, very good entertainment, black-oriented entertainment, again, some of there's a certain threshold that you have to cover before you hit that, what we would consider mainstream success. Obviously we won't see, the Chronicles of Piye, with the same kind of exposure, money, excitement as the Avengers. Okay, and remember, the Avengers is a Hollywood creation, and I say that because it's such a safe creation. This is something that they worked on because they knew they could get a lot of traction, and it's basically low-hanging entertainment fruit. So
and it's all white superheroes too, by the way.
Well, exactly.
Although there is talk of them bringing in the Black Panther, but that just seems to be a rumor that's been circulating for years now.
And that's kind of like throwing us a bone, I guess.
And that's just tokenism.
Right? No, it is.
Again, it's not a black world. It's not a black creation. Remember, all of these characters are well, throwing a bone is sort of like it, but all of these characters, these black characters are, well, we got to have one, so let's make up this one,
Exactly.
Or the women. You had what's her name, Scarlett Johansson playing whatever she played.
The Black Widow. Yeah.
Yeah, and so well, we need a kick-ass woman because we got who was that other one? Mila Jovovich, and we've got South African girl when she doesn't run out of breath because she smokes too much. Charlize Theron, yeah. So you've got these women who are, or what's her name, who was in what were those movies? The Underworld movies.
Oh, Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah. So you have all these tokens that are standouts. And like you said, it's like throwing a bone to a demographic. You have Django Unchained it finally got approved for release in China. But you wouldn't recognize the movie. There's like some Chinese folks in there that we never met who were never in the movie. They got subplots in there. You look at what was that movie? Battleship. They had a Japanese destroyer captain in there so that when they sent it out worldwide, they could get that. So, entertainment basically is just pablum for the masses. Right.
Now, can I bring up something? I wanted to bring this up because this is what Richard and I have talked about this a lot. Because I watch a lot of Asian cinema, and you look at what the Chinese are doing with a lot of their movies nowadays. They're extremely nationalistic.
Yes.
Like a lot of the movies that Jet Li has put out recently and Jackie Chan. They're doing like historical dramas, or they're doing, like I saw one with Donnie Yen where he's fighting, like it was like during when China was occupied by Japan.
Right.
He's just beating the crap out of the Japanese people. They made the Japanese people like the worst people in history. and like, you know, he's flying through the air and kicking the crap out of these Japanese guys, you know.
It's one of the reasons why I don't watch any of that, being half Japanese. I just want you to know.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, they're extremely nationalistic movies, and I always wonder, like, why can't black people do something like that without any fear? Because, like, if we even think about doing a black movie, we always have to make it ourselves docile and, you know, kissing everybody's behind. And took a white guy to do Django Unchained, you know.
But that's the point. See, again, you have an entire industry that has no confidence and you know, in the box office draw of a black movie, and so you end up with somebody who grabs some really, at least to me, offensive low-hanging fruit, like a Tyler Perry. You know, and he's extremely successful. He makes an extraordinary amount of money, and you know, more power to him. I have nothing but good things to say about how he manipulates the market to get what he wants to get.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, if he tried to do, you know, I forget what the name of that movie where he played the super.
Oh, Alex Cross.
Alex Cross. You know, he plays a super brainy, you know, guy, and yet, you know, still that's not really, and that's not his money.
Right.
You know, look what finally Spike Lee had white people's money for Inside Man. I've got my research person over here. Inside Man, and the only way he got white people's money was because he was doing a white production. If for Spike Lee to get that kind of money to do his own production, he has to go to Michael Jordan, Oprah, whomever, to get them to write him a check.
Right.
So I think the fact that you guys have garnered as much support as you have, and you're starting to kick up some pretty decent numbers, that speaks well of what you've done, and it shows how well you are on your way to circumnavigating some of the barriers to getting black entertainment, black comic book entertainment out there in a much bigger way.
Right. Well, we were determined to do it, and we weren't thinking about just money off the back. We were thinking about creating a property that could last us forever.
Something that we would own, and something that would be a legacy that we could hand down. I mean, what we thought too was just about the kids now. They don't really see themselves in these sorts of roles, and we just thought this would be a good thing that we could produce, where younger teenagers, for example, who may not know much about their history, would look at something like this and feel inspired, rather than all the ghetto stuff that they're constantly, ghetto gangster stuff that they're constantly exposed to, which is just, it doesn't really take them anywhere, and it doesn't really do anything for them. And Chris also made a good point about how nationalistic the Chinese were in their cinema, Asians were, and I think that's a good point. This is how we should be. We should also be, in a sense, glorifying our history, and not feel as if we have to have, you know, white people in it, or not to be a hater, but just to be, you know, to feel good about the fact that we produce something for ourselves. I also like the fact that the Chinese people are very conscious of their image, and that's why they demand that they have Chinese people brought into certain movies. It's why they make changes to certain movies, and Hollywood tap dances around them because they want the market. And if viewers of African descent were more discriminating, we would actually be sending a strong message to Hollywood as well, and would probably see a lot more of our characters if we actually employ techniques like what the Chinese are employing. You know, in simply saying we won't watch this or we will watch this, and you know, influencing the market, not to mention the fact that we should also be supporting our artists whenever they're doing something that reflects us in a favorable way.
You're absolutely right. But then, hang on, guys. You're listening to Genesis Science Fiction Radio, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the May 17th, 2013 edition, and we're talking to the creators of the Chronicles of, I'm going to just say Piye because it's easier, guys, okay? Richard Gaskin, who is up in Toronto, Canada, and Chris Miller, who is now in Atlanta, but he's going to be moving to Tennessee. I guess we're going to have a conversation about that a little bit later. You know, one of the things that I want to mention is kind of an adjunct to what you said. Because of money, you know, obviously money floats the boat for all of these businesses, and unfortunately, it would be great if we could go ahead and produce our own art without having to seek out validation from mainstream white entertainment in order to get funded. But it's tough. Let me ask you guys, how did you guys get started? Did you self-fund? Did you, what financially did you do to get started?
Yeah, pretty much self-funding. I mean, we both work for a living, so we were able to put our own money up. And I used, since ChrisCrazyHouse.com is already on a certain server, I used that for the Chronicles of Piye website as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I'm paying for it every month anyway, so I just put it on there, and that's made it easy for us. And then I know Richard paid a lot for the marketing on Facebook and around on the web. So, that's what we said, knowing that we were both serious about this, we weren't afraid to put up our own money to do stuff.
Right. And then I don't want any numbers or anything, but are you finding yourselves to be fairly financially self-sufficient at this point?
Yeah. So far.
Yeah. I mean, we like to make it bigger, of course, but I think going forward, I think we're just seeing more positive things. I mean, as you well know, we got that interview from that Danish magazine based in Denmark, Atlas Mag. They wanted to do a piece about us in an article about Afrofuturism. They also actually interviewed you as well for that article. And, I mean, on Twitter, for example, I've been doing a lot more work on Twitter, and I'm starting to see, more activity there. So I think the word is slowly spreading about this product as well, and I think we're growing. And if we can actually, and the thing is too, we're actually working on developing another comic as well. And I think if we just keep working on that and keep this momentum going, I feel sure that we'll see even greater success.
What's so sad is that we're still kind of in the same cultural model of the 1920s and 30s, where unfortunately some black entertainment, some black art, some black entertainers themselves will find acceptance overseas before they get it here in their home country. I mean, you look at a Quincy Jones, he's like a model for that. How do you think you attracted the attention of people? Like you said, you were interviewed by this group, this concern in Denmark, correct?
Yes.
How did they find you? I mean, how does somebody like that approach you, or how do you think? Did they even tell you what it was that garnered the interest?
I am not even sure. I think that this lady was contracted to do an article on Afrofuturism and just probably did a search on the internet and came across her name. I mean, because we're pretty much out there on Facebook, on Twitter. I did an online press release, which I know as well goes to a lot of news outlets.
Yeah, we've done, that's another thing we've done, or Richard has put together a lot of press releases in different languages, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that too, actually, because I noticed that we're getting some of these fans from, like I said, for different countries, South America, Indonesia, places that we just did not even think we would be getting fans. So, we put out some press releases in, Indonesian language, in Spanish, in Kiswahili, and I think that's also helped to sort of, get it out to various outlets. So maybe that was an attraction as well. Yeah.
I would think that tends to raise your visibility too when you're able to go ahead and put something together like that, even in foreign language. I mean, do you do your ads? Do you do your press releases? Do you do them in native languages, or is this still a mostly English concern?
It's mostly English. We've done on Facebook, I think, a lot of the foreign language stuff because that's an easier way of getting to international markets.
Right. But, and we even have the very first issue of the Chronicles of Piye is actually available in Spanish as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And we're going to do all 4 issues in Spanish. Right now we're just trying to get a sense of what we have to do to increase sales in that area.
Right.
Yeah. And we're just looking to see how well it does. I mean, we just released it not too long ago, so we just want to see what it's doing, and then from there we're going to release everything in Spanish. But I think we have a fairly sizable interest in Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Brazil, which is actually Portuguese speaking, but still Peru, tons of different countries in South and Central America, Ecuador, etc.
A lot of people who are listening and who will tune in later are probably going to be they're going to be very curious and probably even a little bit envious of the fact that you guys in just 2 short years have garnered some pretty decent numbers and some very, very decent marketing. Where did you get, how did you conceive of your marketing plan and things like that? Did you just do things that you knew about social networking, or is it more structured than that? I mean, have either of you taken any business classes to kind of put this forward, or are you self-taught?
Well, Richard has more experience as far as the marketing goes. All I know really to do is to put stuff on social networking sites and, kind of badger as many people as possible that I know on my own networks, to get them to look at stuff. And, putting together just little short videos, the comics and whatnot, and putting out the production art. Because I know, for me anyway, as an artist, I always like to see the stuff beforehand, kind of the pre-production art. I'm very big on stuff like that. So
okay,
people have enjoyed seeing my pre-production stuff for this book as well. And that kind of built up the momentum for it.
Yeah, it was a collaboration in a sense. I mean, because from actually working with the online station, I have learned quite a bit about marketing and various things like that. I've done a lot of research, and Chris and I also exchanged some ideas as well in terms of, he's actually brought a few good suggestions in terms of the venues to sell the products and that sort of thing. I would mention something with Facebook. He would throw in some suggestions about this or that. He's seen people do this, and we would do it. So, like most of the things we've done, it was a collaboration. I mean, I'm sort of more involved with the marketing aspect, but Chris has also, given some pretty good input on various aspects of it. So, we're lucky. His artwork has been great, and, I've come up with some pretty good ways of selling it. The concept that we came up with is pretty good. So I think all in all, it's the product itself, I think, is a big part of why it's selling.
Right.
Actually.
I agree.
Well, obviously, if you didn't have the quality, I mean, people wouldn't follow it. Let me ask you this first, Richard. If Chris weren't on the line and you knew he was never going to hear you say anything, talk a little bit about how the collaboration is, what you think of it, and where you think the real success is. Because even though you may have complementary skills, sometimes you don't have very compatible personalities. So what do you think the success in the collaboration really is?
Well, I think it really is, first of all, keeping our eye on the prize. That is to say, not really letting anything deter us from the fact that we're on this project together. Oh, for sure, we've had some artistic differences. There's no doubt about that. That'll happen in any collaboration. But
sure,
we've worked beyond it. We speak about things, we made adjustments, and we've moved forward. And you got to take into account, too, the fact that this is the first project we're working on together. We're both used to working on our own projects, so it's a bit of an adjustment that way. And I feel, and so the fact that we haven't let anything jeopardize the product, we've committed to it. We've listened to what each other have had to say, and I know that going forward, we're going to actually smooth out this process and make it even better. So I think the real strength just lies in the fact that we're both professional in the way that we deal with this, with the Chronicles of Piye, the fact that we are not going to let any emotions run wild and jeopardize the project. And secondly, we're, like I said, we're professionals. We know that, okay, fine, this person likes it that way, that person wants to do this way, and I know we're going to make adjustments with these things and move forward. Because at the end of the day, we both want success.
And how about you, Chris?
Well, I honestly think that, and I can say this now, that, even if we weren't doing the project, I think Richard and I would be friends. Because, there are times where we, just talked about the project and stuff like that, and we'll go off into a tangent just talking about, just life in general, and our views are very similar as far as, where we think black people should be and, some of the nonsense that a lot of our people get involved in and the good and the bad. So, we've kind of had the meeting of the minds just on that. So just from that base, we know what we want to accomplish with this work. And, like I said, we're on kind of he's kind of like my brother from, another mother for the most part.
Sure. Have you two met?
Actually,
in
no,
person?
We've never actually met in person. No, we've only collaborated online.
Yeah.
And how is that for you? I mean, I'm sure you guys know what each other look like. Have you done the Skype thing?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
When you think about this level of success and to be doing it essentially as an online endeavor, that's pretty remarkable. I mean, do you know that, you guys, that how unusual that is?
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. We're working with what we got right now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems to be working very, very well.
Right.
Do you have any plans to meet, or do you think that might ruin everything?
Someday I think we will meet. Bring the families together. I think it'll be great.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a question of timing, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and money.
Right.
If you win that big Powerball this weekend, you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want to do.
We're going to create our own Powerball.
I was about to say, if either of us won that kind of money, I think, we both slap our bosses, and, I know I'd be calling Richard the next day, be saying, hey, we got Chronicles PA Studios starting tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's before we get too late into the hour, let's talk about where you think you're going to take everything in the future. I mean, what kind of structured plans do you have? What kind of things do you think are kind of floating out there? Where do you think you're going to be 5 years from now?
5 years from now, I can honestly see we'll definitely have more comic books done, and also I think we'll be moving into different mediums as well with our concepts as far as like doing. Because I know we both talked about doing like a mobile game. Like we tried to do it before, but it kind of fell through with the company that we were working with.
Okay.
But this is something that we're just going to have to do on our own, just like we did the comic book. So we'll be moving on doing stuff like that. And like I said, Richard, he's been coming up with some other concepts for not just ancient fantasy, but future fantasy stuff as well. So.
Yeah, the next project is going to be a sci-fi project, and so we think it's just it's good if we keep producing new products, keep working with the old products, maybe get some more people involved with us as we start to grow. And like Chris said, we definitely want to do a video game. And I think, too, we were also looking at animation, like an animated series, I think, would be another.
How did I forget that?
Yeah, exactly. And I know we could do a really good job of it, too. So, I mean, those are some of the things we're looking at. And who knows, maybe live action at some point down the line. But it's just about growing the brand, letting people know who we are, and
yeah, I've been wanting to, my plan definitely for immediately this year is to do some grassroots stuff and just, going, to different conventions and showing the work there. So.
Yeah, how many conventions have you guys gone to?
Well, I've done 2 so far, and I've only done, the book wasn't done yet, so I've only done, just some preview work, just showing people the Chronicles of Piye and telling them where to get it at when it came out on the website. But this year, definitely, I'll be going to OnyxCon 5, and there's a African street festival coming up in September in Tennessee that I would love to do, and I think that would be great. The Chronicles of Piye would be great for that.
We also did, there was a Canyon sort of animation comic festival that we had done. We weren't there physically, but I had a contact in Nairobi, and he actually did a presentation.
Right,
for us.
That's right. We did one in the Caribbean as well, right?
Correct.
Right. Yeah, that's when all we had was like one poster done so far, and some concept work, but we were already showing it. And there's pictures of people, holding up the signs and stuff like that. So.
This is in Barbados, actually.
Right. This is early 2012.
And it was their very first comic convention. There's a lot of people doing cosplay on it, and it was actually very cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had the C2E2 here in Chicago. Quite a lot of people there. Bigger show, but you get that with a larger city. So you guys haven't met. You have a great collaboration that's very, very successful. How soon do you think? Do you think that the two of you will be working together alone? Do you think you'll be adding more people to help with the creative world? Obviously, maybe when you move to 2D or 3D animation,
right?
You might want to farm out some of that just so that you can keep a better hand on your creative side.
Right. Well, we've talked about that right when we started. That we want to. Once we can find people that are just as serious as we are, to bring them in as well. And even, once we can start bringing in even more revenue, we might even be able to, pay people, because I'm a big proponent of paying people for their work. So, but I want people that are also serious and want to, actually add on to what we've created.
Sure. Remind me to give you my contact information after the show. All right. And so what about your family life? How do you manage, the family? And now, well, let me ask you this: are both of you doing the creative work for? And I'll try it this way: Chronicles of Piye. Are you doing this full time, or do you have other jobs that you do to help sustain, to pay the bills and things like that?
We have jobs.
Yes, we will. I work as a contractor, so I do different jobs for people around the country. But what I'll do is I'll divide my day, because since a lot of the work that I've been doing the last year or so has been for people in California, and I'm on a different time set, I can do a lot of work for. I was doing a lot of work for Chronicles of PA in the morning, and just working for those people in the afternoon. So.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Richard?
The same thing. Actually, I work freelance right now. I am with one company, sort of freelancing through their various subsidiaries, but I have more of a day job for me. So I find on weekends and on on the evenings, that's when I tend to do my work. Sometimes I wake up early in the morning as well.
Yeah. That's the television production job that you have?
That's correct. Yes.
Now, are you learning things for your future for that?
Yeah. Right now, I'm working a lot with. I'm working a lot with their digital media stuff. So their webisodes, they're doing productions to be shown on the internet, those sorts of things. So I'm learning a lot about the budgeting of it, what goes into making it, how big these things are, the various funding models that they use, the marketing that they use. It's actually very, very good place to be right now, considering the product that we do have, and the various marketing vehicles that are out there on the internet. So I think it's really teaching me a lot, actually, and it's going to really bode well for the future as Chris and I move further into doing more of these productions.
It's nice getting paid to learn, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, exactly.
You should use every job as a learning experience, because I've learned a lot as far as like designing stuff for mobile games, and that's
sure.
I definitely hope to put that into when we do our own game. Just learning about just the intricacies and keeping everything as simple as possible and making sure the file size is low so it doesn't blow out anyone's phone or iPod.
Right. Now, let me ask you guys this. I'll start with you, Chris. Who were some of the influences, in your, as you went along, who you looked at and said, I like what they're doing. It's very inspiring. Who can you name who might have inspired you to get to where you are today?
Well, early influences, is a lot of artists had the same influences, like fantasy artists like Frank Frazetta. Of course, like people like George Lucas and stuff like that. But I would say from a more personal standpoint, what inspired me to just strike out and start doing stuff on my own as an artist was looking at people that I met at the Onyx Con, actually, like people that have been doing this stuff for a while, like Dawood Anya Dweeble. He created the Brother Man series. Meeting guys that, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank. Oh, James Mason, that does Urban Shogun comics, and he's the one that actually helped me find out how to, get my comics printed and stuff like that. So I always thank him for that. And
so essentially for you, it was just the entrepreneurship of taking control of your own life and putting your own art together.
Right, because I was thinking just when I first wanted to do my own comics, because I've been doing animation and stuff like that and doing other things on my own, but then seeing them once I learned how to, go through that printing process and where to get it done, and learning that I didn't have to go through a whole bunch of middlemen to do it, that I could just do it myself and get the thing done, that made a big difference. And, I always thank those guys when I see them.
Sure. What about you, Richard?
Well, for me, it depends how far back you want to go, but, your basic sort of comics and fantasy science fiction writers, like classic science fiction writers like Isaac Asimov and Theodore Sturgeon and Ray Bradbury. Those guys were early influences on me. Also to people like Octavia Butler, for example. And when I was a kid growing up, there was this Barbadian writer. His name is Timothy Candler, and he wrote this book called How Music Came to the Ancient People. And that was actually a big influence on me. It was a book that he had given my aunt. He had autographed it himself, and I read it about 8 or 9 times. But that was very interesting because it was written by a Caribbean person, and it really detailed a lot of different things that it involved aliens, and it also involved African culture as well. It was a real mix between African sort of traditional culture and science fiction sort of setting. It was very interesting. I think that had a big impact on me as well. Sophia Stewart, the so-called writer of The Matrix, I think she is. I mean, she has a sort of a lawsuit going on, but you really hear nothing about it. I did an interview with her on Camet Music Radio, and it was very revealing and eye-opening, and it was very interesting. So she was a big influence as well. Yeah, I mean, but there are very many influences that I've had growing up in terms of my decision to write and wanting to do these sorts of things.
Right. Did you now? About how old were you when you started doing your own writing? About how old were you then?
Well, it depends how far back you want to go. Like I said, I did comics. I actually drew like comic series and wrote like short science fiction stories when I was like 8, 9 years old. It's something I kept doing on and off because as you get older, there's always that pressure to get a real job, but I never gave it up. And then I think, again, with Chronicles at Piye, was just a sense of urgency that I felt like, if I don't do this now, I will never do it.
Right, and so, yeah, for you, it was more than just doing the drawing of it. You were putting together the stories, the everything. It was not just you drawing pictures, correct?
Yeah, when I was younger, I did a lot of drawing. I gave that up, actually. It was me and my cousin Michael, and he sort of kept it with the drawing, and I just did more of the writing. But that was how I first started. That actually was my first writing was really writing comics, me and my cousin, and I did the drawing. We both did the drawing. We created our own heroes. We collaborated on stuff. So I think that was really the first inspiration to do this. So when I was at reach a point in my career when I thought, well, you want to do something more creative, what are you going to do? I instinctively thought about comics. And I think one of the attractions too is just the fact that you can create your own world without worrying about funding, because at that point I was aware of the fact of how expensive it was to make a film. And the fact that I knew that to get funding for the sorts of things I wanted to create would be next to impossible. I mean, so, comics was, I think, the inspiration, and I think that's where I finally went back to. It's sort of funny, but that was my first artistic expression, and that's where I'm at right now.
And when you guys are putting together a storyline, are you guys at the point now where you're fairly simpatico? You've got your creative universe, you've got your characters, you have essentially, the personalities and everything. Is it very easy for you two to collaborate to get, let's say, to do a new comic? Are you at that point where you're, I know there's give and take. I know that there will be agreements, disagreements, but is the collaborative process very, very, is it becoming easy for you? Is it already easy for you? Where are you at with that?
Well, for me, it's, once I see the words that Richard writes, what it does is sparks my imagination. So for me, it becomes very easy just to, come up with different things, and then I can, maybe send some stuff to him. Like, that's what we did for Chronicles of Piye. I just kind of sent some stuff to him and see what he liked, and, we kind of just went back and forth from there. So, yeah, I mean, once you start, just like looking at it, like I said, his words kind of inspire me. I know it sounds kind of corny and cliche, but, just... Well,
not at all.
But like once I see those, I was like, that just sparks my imagination and just thinks of different possibilities and what I could create. So
that's great. In about 5 minutes, we're going to open up the phone lines for anybody who wants to dial in and ask questions of you two. Just so that the moment I say, okay, does anybody have anything they'd like to ask you, I'm always met with a crushing, depressing, make me get off the phone and cry silence. So you have that to look forward to, and then we also have people in the chat room that we're going to try to pick up any questions that they have for you as well. You're listening to Genesis Science Fiction Radio, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. Tonight is the May 17th, 2013 episode, and we're talking to the creators of the Chronicles of Piye, Richard Gaskin and Chris Miller. Richard is in Toronto. Chris joins us from Atlanta. And, if you want to take a look at their stuff while we're talking, get your questions together, go to www.chroniclesofpiye.com. Let's see. Somebody will put the link up in the. Well, let me do that. And take a look at their work, get some questions together, and Yeah, there you go. Somebody. Oh, yeah, somebody. I like that. I like how you sent them right to the store.
Yes.
Yes, we have stuff to buy.
Right.
Yeah. So I like that. I'm guessing. Well, here let's see if we've got at least one other person on the line who might have a question. Any questions from anybody dialed in? What'd I tell you, guys? What did I tell you? That's that crushing silence that makes me cry. All right, well, we'll wait for more people to dial in. But, I do have a question. I mean, when you talk about creating a speculative universe like this, do you guys already have it so ingrained in your heads that you don't have to have, style sheets, editorial sheets, your characters mapped out in writing and all of that? I mean, is this mostly in your heads right now, or are you structured enough that you have what you work from? Go ahead.
No, I mean, Richard he wrote like a full script. Like the Chronicles of Piye that we have so far is only half of that script.
Right.
So, there's going to be definitely more of it. And like I said, he came up with just like, we went through the character profiles, like we went back and forth on that, and like I said, there's a whole big script, and like I came up with different character designs. So, yeah, there's a character Bible that we can always go to.
That's what I was talking about.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I got a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, this is Alonzo Von 3. I think you guys might know me from my Facebook. You ever heard of me? Maybe not.
Alonzo.
I know I'm friends with you guys on the Facebook.
Right.
And I probably met you from Black Science Fiction. But I just, about 2 days before they announced that you were going to be on this talk show, I did order your one of your magazines, so it's on the way. And I had actually tried to order it sometime before, and I went back to order some bolts for my camera, and I saw that it was hung in a queue. So I would have gotten it a long time ago, so I wanted to let you know that. I don't know if you actually see my order, but I'm very impressed that you have it on Amazon. And I'd like to hear a little bit about that process of how you actually, did you have to pre-print them? Did you actually have to, or do they print them for you? I don't know how that works at all.
It depends on where you get them from. But from Amazon, what they did a deal. They bought this website called CreateSpace.com. Mm-hmm. And CreateSpace is like a print on demand. So what you do is you're sending them the digital files of the pages.
Okay, that's
right. And you create a file, and then they print it. When you order it, that's when they print it out for you.
That's excellent. So that's what I want. So you get to save, actually, and it's order on demand, so you don't have any huge upfront costs or loss or possible loss. So the other comment, and I was hoping that you did recognize me from Facebook, because I wanted to say the blue character with the mask on top. I'm sorry, was it? My comic book hasn't come yet, so I don't know.
Johnny. Yeah, you're talking about Johnny. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that design is absolutely awesome, and I was doing some 3D robots, and I took one of the robots and I cut it up and I put the head on top of a mask, and it's kind of similar. I want you to know that I didn't try to copy you. It's just that you guys are so when I did see it, I said, you guys figured it out. You beat me to it. That's awesome design. My original inspiration was kind of after I saw Lion King. But, again, that was a situation where they're taking our art and then recapitulating it and recapitalizing on it in the public, and they made a lot of money from it. So it's not that it's not a market for it. It's just getting it to market.
Right.
And
that design actually came from, because Richard wrote the character as being from West Africa, and so I did a lot of research on, the different masks and like the Nok Empire and like the Benin Empire and stuff like that. So that's where it came from.
Right. I did a lot of research with that as well, and it's still really difficult. And I think what you did was shorten the neck and you made it work. I was like, they figured it out. Awesome job. I just wanted to congratulate you and kudos and just fantastic work. It's a great style of its own. And if you need an animator, a 3D animator, give me a holler.
Okay.
Hey, we'll be knocking on your door. Don't worry.
All right.
And while you're at it, check on his order that's stuck in the queue, too, would you guys?
Yeah. Literally, I saw it yesterday, and I pulled it out.
Where'd you order from?
Amazon. It's on its way now.
Okay.
It was only $7, which is a great buy, and the shipping, I got that right. So it's just me fumble fingers with it. But I was getting a piece for my camera, and I said, hey, this is stuck in my queue. And lo and behold, you have an interview the next day, so I'm totally saved face on that. I saved mask, let's say, for pun intended. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
See, you got fans everywhere, guys.
Yeah, I know.
And you know, when you think about it, when you think about the numbers that you've rolled up, I mean, when you talk about you've got 100,000 fans
over
on Facebook.
100,000. Yeah, on Facebook. Yeah.
And then
and a growing number of people on Twitter too. Our Twitter account's actually growing now.
Yes.
As of maybe the last month and a half, we've yeah.
And what about unique visitors to your site per month? Do you do the metrics on that as well?
It's been a while since I've looked, but that the site is doing very well. It's about the same as the Facebook.
Okay.
So maybe a little bit lower than the Facebook because people go to Facebook first usually, it seems like, and then they come to the website.
Very cool. Very cool. I had a brilliant question. It was probably the best question that would have ever been asked in the existence of radio, and of course it's just blown completely out of my head. You know how they say I lost my train of thought. I can't even see the caboose. I do have this question though. Once you get to the point where you're going to start doing 3D animation and movies, you're probably going to have to look at a slightly different business financial model. Are you planning for that? Are you looking at that ahead, or is that just a little bit too far ahead for you to be worrying about at this point?
There's something that we've talked about, just like I said, just a little on a not on a big scale, because we've talked about before, just figuring out that we couldn't do it just by ourselves, so we just have to think about it and try to produce the content that we can right now.
Mm-hmm.
To get more people into it. And I've thought about doing some doing some 2D animation myself, almost just like as a preview, I guess you could say. That might be a way to build more interest and build more funding as well.
And just on another note, you guys have put together a business entity, correct?
Well, we just have it as a partnership for now, but Chris and I decided that I felt that we needed to have like a brand.
Right, yeah. That's what we're working on right now, actually.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the reason why I brought it up was I was going to ask about the logistics of working out of two different countries at the same time. I mean, obviously multinationals do it all the time, but it's a little bit different when you talk about an entrepreneurial startup having to go through the same kinds of things. So, if you haven't gotten to that point, I was just going to ask how did you guys manage that? Because the internet almost takes away barriers. It takes away barriers in terms of distance, in terms of collaboration, in terms of friendship, in terms of a lot of things. I mean, you look at Facebook, and if you're a person and you've got 3,221 friends, you'd have to be an idiot to believe that they're your real friends. But for you guys, you actually have to get work done. And your collaborative efforts are all electronic, which is pretty cool in itself. And I was just looking at a little bit at the, how you pulled off the business part. But if that also is coming, which makes sense, seeing as how you guys pretty much started only a couple of years ago.
Right. Yeah, we started just like Richard said, just as a collaboration. But we've been, wanting to create just like a brand, as you can say, for our works that are going to be coming out next, after Chronicles of Piye. So.
Sure. And where do you think all of this is going to take you? You know, if somebody comes along and they you know, I'm going to give you the dream sequence. If somebody says, hey, I will give you $30 million to take over everything that you guys have, what happens at that point?
That depends. When you say take over, what do you mean? Like taking our?
Well, they just buy you out. You know, that's how business is. If somebody sees something successful, if they can't dupe it, they'll just try to buy it from you.
I think we try to, in a sense, maybe give them a stake in it without giving up.
Yeah, because I mean, this is something that us building this from the ground up, from nothing at all. You know, it'd be kind of hard just to kind of just give up this concept and, you know, just give it away to somebody, even for 30. Because I mean, they'll make billions of dollars off of something that, you know, they only gave us 30 million, but that we had to split between ourselves or something. You know.
Right. And what about? Do you have? You've got the Chronicles of Piye. Do you have any other creative universes that you guys are working on? You mentioned wanting to do a sci-fi. What was it? A sci-fi film?
Yeah, that's already something we've started working on. We got like a basic. Like I sent Chris a basic outline for it, plot, how it's going to work and everything else, and we're going to.
Very cool, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Chris. And so yeah, we decided to go in a different area. This time it's going to be more of a science fiction sort of a thing to do, and I think it's going to be very cool. I think again it's going to be something that you don't or haven't seen out there, and it'll be different to Piye, but it's going to have the same groundbreaking artwork that Chris is famous for, and. You know, again, we're going to collaborate on different things. The look, he's going to give me some suggestions about the storyline if he doesn't think it will work. And, like, you know, we're going to collaborate as we always have done in the past, and I think we're going to come
and black characters.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't want to come on saying like that.
Black people will exist in the future.
Yeah, in outer space.
And they won't be wearing red shirts.
That's correct.
Yeah, we're not going to be killed off in the first 5 minutes of the show.
Yeah,
so.
And black aliens too. So it's trust me, it's going to be very cool.
Right.
Have you guys ever thought about chronicling? You know, you have very, very divergent upbringings. You know, you grew up in very different places. You live obviously in 2 different countries. Is there any place where people can kind of get a little better sense of who you guys are? I mean, is that kind of information available online for people to check out, or you know, have you not gotten to the point where you've done that big marketing thing about who you are, where you are, and what you've done?
Well, for our collaboration, we've done most of the stuff. We kept it, you know, just for the concept. But I mean, I do stuff on my own website. I have a blog on my YouTube channel where I just talk about, you know, whatever is on my mind. I call it a sketch blog, because I'm doing a sketch at the same time as I'm, you know, doing my video blog. Instead of just having someone stare at my face the whole time, I want to do something interesting. And I also give out, you know, free art lessons and animation lessons as well on my YouTube channel, which you can find on my website at chriscrazyhouse.com.
Oh, so there's a link there, and
yeah,
then,
just go to the blog page, and all that stuff is on there. So.
Very cool. And your YouTube channel, if people just want to go direct to that, is it under your name, or is it under?
Yeah, it's under
Chris Crazy House.
I mean, yeah, if you just type in Chris Crazy House into Google, you'll find everything on me. So.
Very cool. Including those outstanding warrants. I just want to let you know that. Look, I do my research. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I don't dwell. All right, so. Doing the whole shows thing, you know, that's coming up soon. Possibly now that the sci-fi comic will be. Are you thinking of spinning that off into a movie right away? Because of course, you know that you run into the funding thing. It appears that with the kind of traffic you draw, you shouldn't have too much difficulty at least getting people interested in the fact that you want to branch out and do something else.
Right.
Have you talked to other people yet, or is it a little bit too premature to think about talking to people about your branching out? You know, maybe looking for funding, anything like that. Are you just right now really tied up in in doing the comic and getting?
Well, I'll let Richard answer most of that, but I mean, we talked about it just ourselves, just as far as like building our audience first, but there's definitely we're definitely talked about as far as the funding goes for other stuff, like other aspects, like even for the Chronicles of Piye, like doing like maybe animation or doing a game, like maybe even thinking about doing a crowdfunding for that sometime later on.
Yeah, because right now we're working on the graphic novel, getting the graphic novel,
right,
which will be a condensation of all 4 comics, plus it'll have some additional scenes in it, and it'll have like additional things like a glossary, maps, the names of the characters, their weapons, how they fit into the story. So we're just focused on just getting that whole package out, and once we've done that, then as we develop the science fiction story, we'll probably start doing a sort of a low profile look into how we can fund either the video game or an animation movie, because I think that's the next big step. But for now, we just want to get the whole package out first, and once we've done that, and done a little bit more promotion, try to build up the audience even more, then I think it'll give us more of a handle in getting people interested, and at the same time we will have a completed production. So I think that's the idea, just to build the audience, but definitely we're going to be looking into video game and or some sort of animation movie as well.
Right. And it's funny when I think about it, I think we talked about this last time me and Richard talked, was that you realize that, it was 2 years ago that we didn't have anything at all. That we just kind of made this out of scratch, and like where we came from and where we are right now, it's, it is amazing when you actually sit and think about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You guys have really pulled off, some remarkable stats in terms of the interest that you get, and also, it's not going to take very long before I think that you'll be able to justify, having the attention on you that for producing a movie, for maybe somebody saying, well, these guys are very successful at having created this universe. Let's take a look at what they've got. So obviously building your brand is, as you said, very, very important. And I think, the other part that we talked about, you keeping your eyes on the prize and making sure that your collaborative work is always moving in a forward direction, and is additive and not subtractive. You're working well together. All of that looks to be a pretty solid business model from which to move forward.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, we think sorry.
Okay, so teach everybody else out there who doesn't know how to do that.
Well, like I said, you got to have people that are serious about it. That was the key thing, and finding people that that's very hard to find, especially in our community.
I agree, because what you tend to get is people who, even at the beginning, though they may sound gung-ho, at the first hint of difficulty, at the first hint sometimes even
they disappear.
They vanish. There's just no force of character, no strength there. They come on, they're all like smiles and everything. The first hint of difficulty, the money's not rolling in right away, and we're out of here.
Right, and Richard knows that I've been through a lot on the personal end in the last year or so, and like I was still bound and determined to get this book done. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, people are not taught very much about a work ethic. Plus, there's an expectation for instant gratification in our culture, and the other sad part is that kids have been taught to have a very, very short attention span. So if you have somebody young who's looking to maybe get into the business or is interested in it, and they don't have immediate success, a lot of people just quit. And it's tough. I mean, you guys obviously have what it takes to keep on going. Plus, you've made an accommodation with each other that appears to me is going to have some long-term success. So all of those things bode well for your future, in my opinion. So
right.
Trying to convey that to other people is obviously hard. And if they don't have it, let's be honest, it's very tough out there to spend the time and resources to try to teach somebody when everybody's about the business of survival.
Right.
So it's very lucky and very rare that the two of you found each other in order to pull this off together.
Right. I always joke that, it's going to be maybe a year or so or 2 years from now, and then people are going to be like jumping on the bandwagon all of a sudden, and, and they won't know that, they'll think it's an overnight success, but they won't realize that we've been working on this thing for forever. So.
Yeah. Blood, sweat, and tears.
Exactly.
All right. So Are there? Does anybody else? Let's take a look at the chat window. I'm looking here. Oh, poor guy. He's got to work harder. Yeah, the one guy in there who's got like 9 jobs. He's talking about, "Nah, I'm shamed. I've got to work harder." One of the things that I want to know personally, and you know, I'm not trying to brag and say anything, but as a writer, I have a process that works well for me. Richard, how do you know, what is your process for putting together a story? You know, what's the beginning, the middle, and the end? How does it start? How do you move it forward? And then what happens when you get stuck?
Well, those are all very good questions. The first thing, how do I move it forward? Well, first of all, you come up with a concept, and what I do is I will write out about anywhere from 8 to 10 different sort of what I call plot outlines. I'll just like try to come up with a paragraph with a story based on the concept I'm thinking of, and then I will look at them all and by a process of elimination decide which one suits the project we're working on. Sometimes I will take elements from one and put them in another, and by a process of doing that, I finally come up with what I consider like the final template for the story. From there, then, it's just a question of giving myself an outline where I basically spell out what it's about and what will essentially happen in it. It'll be, you know, a summary more or less, because you still have to develop the characters and the story itself, but at least it gives me an outline for where I want to go. I find if you don't do that, sometimes you write and you can, like you said, you get stuck and then it becomes really hard to get yourself out of it. But if you have a roadmap, which is what that outline is, I find it easier to get from point A to point B, because you have a sense of where you're going even before you start. And the ending may be different to what you originally had planned, and things may happen in it that you didn't actually account for in your original outline. But again, having that map is what really gives me the opportunity to go straight ahead. And there will be blocks, but I find myself able to move around those blocks. With Chronicles at Piye, when I did that, for example, I couldn't stop writing. At first I thought, how am I going to write this story? I couldn't think of myself like writing the entire thing. And then after a while, I just couldn't stop. I actually had to force myself to bring it to a halt. I kept saying to Chris, I've got this many pages. No, I've got that many pages. No, I've got that many pages. And he was getting concerned. I had to like chop it and say, look, this is it. I have to bring this to a halt. But again, I find having that outline works for me. And what allows me to get there is just, again, like I said before, coming up with those 8 or 9 different story outlines. Sometimes they're about different things. Sometimes they share 1 or 2 common themes. But at the end of it all, when you look at this, you get a sense of what will work for the particular project you're working on, and what doesn't work. At least that's how it does for me. And then from there, once I have that, I do the outline, and with the outline in place, then I know exactly how I'm going to move that story forward.
And at what point in the process do you get Chris involved, or are you kind of working it through with him at the same time as you're going along?
Well, at each step, I'll send Chris what I've written, and I'll just ask his feedback on it. For example, when I first had the idea in mind, okay, this is what it basically is about. I spoke with Chris. What do you think? Blah blah blah. Then when I did the story outline, even before I'd written one single page of the actual story, I sent it to Chris. What do you think? So, I mean, he'll say it's good, it's all good, whatever, and then I'll get into the story, and here and there I will again talk to Chris and just, touch base with him on certain things. Do I have too many characters? Should I do this? What do you think of that? Because it's always good to get feedback from, especially the person you're working with, because it is a collaborative process. I'm not writing a book, I'm writing a comic. So I have to make sure that he is involved, in some respect as well when I actually come up with the actual story itself. So that's how it's in stages, but that's how I generally do it.
And Chris, when he's going through all of this, do you have a good visualization of exactly what's going on? I mean, can you kind of tune into it right away? Is there difficulty with that, or are you guys at the stage now where you've got things so kind of set and your mutual creativity has been used so much that it comes out easy?
Well, I mean, for me anyway, really, is like Richard's writing is very descriptive, so it's very easy for me to piece together a scene. Like the opening scene to Chronicles of Piye, where Piye's older brother Shabaka is fighting the villain Tosca. That was a very descriptive scene. Really, I didn't have to do much at all. It was just just taking what he had written there already and just visualizing it, making it look cool. I think the only thing I really had to do was maybe just kind of, I guess, not really shorten it, but give it like a shorthand, I guess you could say, so people know exactly what's going on, and I don't have to write down the words exactly like how he's describing it, but just show it. You know what I mean? And because it's different when you're writing a script and showing something visually, like either in a storyboard or in a comic book. So.
Right. Now, since you both have full-time jobs, that kind of sustain you, and the creative collaboration is something that is kind of almost like not just as much a full-time job as what you do, but it's not sustaining you financially yet. Do you guys do any work outside of what you do for the creative part? I mean, do you do any community outreach? Have you done any work with kids? Do you go back to the schools that you may have matriculated from? If that's the right way to say that. What kind of what kinds of things do you guys do? Let's just talk about community outreach. I mean, any teaching, any seminars, anything like that you guys are doing?
The only thing that I do usually is just through conventions. Like I've done panels for people at different conventions, and I've given talks at conventions as well. And really just doing just what we're doing right now. People ask me, how do we get to this point, or how did I get here? And to me, really it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But I guess, for someone who's not in that position, it is a big deal to hear that, the story of how someone got to where they are right now. So, and I do that, and, anytime someone asks me a question, like I get a lot of questions from young people online about art and whatnot. So, and I've actually started to get a lot more international people now that Chronicles of Piye gets so much international attention.
Sure. What about you?
So,
yeah. And what about you, Richard?
Well, I haven't really done so much outreach per se, but I do get, again, like comments from people sending me emails just asking me about the story, how I got to that point, how did I find this person that I've worked with. I also, too, made some contacts over in Nairobi. And every now and then through Facebook, they'll touch base with me and ask me how it's going. Actually, one of them, Ian, came up here to in Canada, but he was over on the West Coast in British Columbia. He was on some sort of special summer camp for media, and he's back now in Nairobi, and he touches base with me as well. So I guess my outreach has been a little bit more on the international level in the sense that I've been talking to people, a couple people in Barbados and some people in Nairobi as well. Actually, I was interviewed on one of their television stations, KTN, about Chronicles of Piye, which was kind of cool, actually, my first television interview. And this was just after we had done we had set up a booth at their television and animation expo that they had a couple of years back.
Okay, so again, even a lot of your outreach work is all online and kind of remote.
It is kind of remote, but you've made a good point in the sense that I had been thinking about the fact that that's something I should do a bit more of. I guess I'm just trying to decide at what point do I do it, and I thought maybe I'm going to wait until we get that graphic novel out, and then at that point I think I'll start expanding my outreach.
Right. That takes time planning that type of travel, because I know just for me doing just little conventions around the United States.
Sure.
Planning a trip, getting your plane ticket and getting your hotel and stuff like that. And I like to plan stuff at least 6 months in advance so I know where I'm going to be at. So.
Well, some people have put, that kind of community outreach as, or they characterize it as growing our audience.
Right.
When you have a black-oriented creative universe, you want to grow your audience, and sometimes being able to tell people how you did it and what was important to you, who inspired you, and things like that is a great entree into figuring out or getting other kids to think about, well, I could do that. I can write a story, I can tell a story, I can even draw a picture. And, again, we do have to grow our audience because not as many people are reading, even comic books. Comic books are a great entree for kids. There's nothing better to inspire the imagination of a child than a comic because it's so accessible and the format lends itself to a kid's attention span. So, in terms of that, I was thinking in terms of more like, well, how do we pass on something to the next generation or inspire them?
Well, you raise a good point, actually, because not only, as you say, are you inspiring the next generation by being there and talking to them, but you are growing your audience. And I think community networking is also a very important part of getting any product out. I know big companies do it. They'll hire people to do that for them. The company I work at, they also have someone, too, and that's what her role is, really, is a sort of a community online person reaching out and doing various things to help promote their various webisode productions. So that's something I should probably look at as well.
Well, I mean, and I don't want to make it sound like I was pushing you into it or anything like that, but
No. But I mean, hey, when someone makes a good point, I don't know everything, and definitely, any business plan or any marketing plan could always use an improvement. So, I mean, when I hear a suggestion like that, and it's something I've been brooding over myself, I would have to say, maybe it is a timely thing to look into in more detail and to start seeing how I can actually make it happen.
Right, and be just to let you guys know, we're both family men as well. Like Richard has a family, I have a wife, so it's not like we're just artists living in our mom's basement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, either of you have kids?
I do, yes.
Richard does, yes.
Yeah, I mean, kids are great, especially if you can send them home at the end of the day. Man, I love that.
I know the feeling. I hate to say that.
Yeah, well,
but they're a blessing.
Okay,
they're a blessing.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, Richard, how old? Do you have one, two? What? How old are they?
One at the moment, he's 7 years old.
Okay. Any interest in drawing, or do you see any nascent? Kind of passing on of your talent or at least your interest yet?
Oh, well, I've really been working with him on his reading, which has been improving, and he started reading comics. I actually got this book for him. My wife did, because I really told her that we need to get him more into learning about his culture, but this book about Yoruba, West African folk tales is in a comic form. So I recently got him that. He's reading stuff like Tintin, but I've been working very hard with him because the thing is, people think schools will raise their children, but they actually won't. And a lot of the problems you see in America with schooling of black children, that's actually being a growing phenomenon here with increased high school dropouts and that sort of thing. So you really have to teach your children, so to speak. So that one thing I've been working with him is reading. And one thing I do notice is his reading is improving. He's starting to do it a bit more now for enjoyment, not just as a chore that he has to do. But he also plays with Lego, and he's got a really good sense of design.
Mm-hmm.
So if he ever starts to draw, man, watch out.
You might have yourself an engineer or an architect on your hands.
There you go. Exactly.
Not bad. You want them to be able to take care of you when you can't take care of yourself.
Right.
Keep that in mind.
That's the plan. We don't want him to be a bum. That's the plan.
There you go. And so, Chris, you're on your way to Tennessee. You mentioned that financially, or at least the job opportunities, are not as good where you are for startup. Do you have anything waiting for you in Tennessee when you arrive?
Well, the reason we're moving to Tennessee really is just for a change of scenery, and my wife is she just finished her PhD actually, so she'll be actually working for the State Department there. So, and for me, since it doesn't matter where I live to work, since I'm already working for people out of state anyway, it doesn't matter where I go. So
it had nothing to do with. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying for me, it does. It's not that big of a deal where we go. So.
I thought your moving had something to do with that warrant, but I mean that's fine too.
No, not the warrant this time. No.
Okay, well that's good. All right, well you guys are doing very good work, and I hope people do go and visit your website at www.Chronicles of PA, and that's spelled Chronicles like you spell Chronicles if you know how to spell. Of is easy, and PA is PIYE.com. ChroniclesofPA.com. And then, of course, Chris has a bunch of his stuff at chriscrazyhouse.com. Are there any other sites where we can look at your stuff? Chris, they'll find your YouTube channel there. What about you, Richard?
Well, we do have a YouTube channel for Chronicles of Piye as well.
Yes, we do.
Type it in.
Yeah. Okay.
All the links for the YouTube, the Twitter, and the Facebook are on the Chronicles of Piye website.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Somebody says you both have wives. How do you manage the time? That is a good question. You got full-time jobs. You both have wives. Richard has little ones running around. How do you do your time management?
Structured, very structured. I mean, I have to basically say, like, I can, take this much time to work on this, and then after that, I have to sort of work on other things.
Right.
Actually, too, I even have this job where I'm moonlighting as well, where I have a client I'm working for on weekends and weekdays. So it's like being in the military. You have to say, okay, I have 1 hour for this, I can spare 2 hours for that, and you can't really ignore your wife, you can't ignore your son or your family. So
it's structuring, really, like you said, just structuring the time, because I learned from a lot of authors, especially a lot of independent authors, that, even if you spend just an hour doing your project, that's an hour that, that you're getting it done. So don't just don't blow it off. That's what they were trying to teach me, so. And I believe that, at least even if I'm just spending like a few hours in the morning, because like for a while I was just doing stuff like I would get up at like 5 in the morning and work from like 5 to 7.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, the rest of the day would just be a work day. But even just doing that is getting something done.
Yeah, the only reason why I actually got my first book written was because I treated it like a part-time job.
Right.
For me, it was every night at 10 p.m. I stopped whatever I was doing, and I got on the computer and I either wrote or edited until 2 in the morning.
Right.
And I swear to you that is the only reason why it got done, because I don't think that I don't really feel like it today. I don't feel creative today. I know people who treat writing like that and haven't written a damn thing. So it kind of, I mean, think about it. I'll be honest with you. My first book was like 330,000 words. How do you write that many words without discipline?
Right.
How do you get a drawing done? How do you get a comic done without discipline? And the fact that you have completely separate lives, not in terms of, nobody knows what you're doing, but separate lives in terms of having to get the work done, having to be a father, having to be, a whatever you do for your regular pay the bills job. I mean, that's a lot. And people with no discipline don't get it done. So, I mean, in that way, you guys are to be lauded as well for having made that accommodation and made it effectively. It's not an easy job.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, any kids in your future, Chris? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yes, hopefully so. All
right. Okay, I've got some babysitting tricks for putting them to sleep and stuff like that. So we'll stay in touch. And the last part about this is, once you achieve, a good modicum of success, I doubt that you're going to rest on your laurels, but, obviously money gives you freedom. Money gives you a little bit of time. Money gives you, the ability to not have to struggle. What do you see in your mind's eye, Richard, for how you're going to, how you're going to kind of structure your not your dream life, but your better life?
Well, I know Chris and I have talked about starting a studio, and
wow.
I mean, yeah, I think we want to have our own production studio where we do comics. I guess maybe something similar to what you see with Marvel and DC, where we're spitting out product in terms of having, great stories and cornering a niche, a market per se, but also translating that into productions, probably on an animation type basis at first. And then from there, seeing if we can push it into live action. But I mean, that's how I see things. With us just really making this a serious go, having this as a company where we're working at. This is our job. We have people working with us, working for us, and we become a player on the international scene, and I mean that's where else we want what we want to be. That's what the goal is. That's our goal. That's a directive, and that's where we're going to work towards.
That's very cool. Somebody wants to know, how old are you guys?
I'm in my early 40s.
I'm 32.
That's pretty good, for that. I mean, a lot of people have gone a lot longer in life. I'm not going to mention my name before they got things on the road like that. And so you have a good deal of future ahead of you, which I think is great. Doing the studio is going to be nice because not only will it allow you to, have the luxury of doing your own things in-house, trying things, new things like that, but then there's a certain amount of possible mentoring that you might do for, younger PAs who are coming up or
right.
people who are earlier. Either of you give any thought to teaching?
Well, my whole thing is I would like to do the studio just to be able to put some young artists to work, because the problem is a lot of things is, they can't find jobs nowadays, and a lot of times it's not because they're not talented, but the industry is very, I'll be honest, it's very closed to, black people. They let like maybe one or two in.
Sure.
And not everyone can get in, or maybe they're just not in the right area. They don't get the opportunity, so that'd be my thing, is be able to put some people to work as well, and that will be a teaching opportunity in and of itself, to give somebody else a chance.
That's a great point, actually. That is one of the things that we wanted to do as well, was when we started a company, is to hire young people. I mean, that is actually one of the problems. We in the community, generally in North America, I would say the West, we don't own companies where we can hire our young. So, I think that's one of the greatest things we can give the youth, teaching them by actually giving them the work to do.
Right.
And if we could do that, that would be a really amazing thing. That's one of our goals as well. Is to,
right, because, I mean, people talk so much about, and they can, hustle their products as much as they want, but you'll really have the ear of the youth when you can actually employ them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that is true. Plus, not only are you passing skills down to a new, cadre of people who are coming up, but it's a way of maintaining your own audience and maintaining your own customers.
Right.
Because of those people who are interested in creating, film, comics, what have you. If they have the opportunity to do so, they're going to be looking at what's around them. They're going to be exposing their kids. It is pretty cyclical, and I think that it's a good way of, they use the phrase paying it forward or whatever, but it's a good way of expanding other people's minds in directions that are far more productive than, running drugs or, whatever kids do to get into trouble these days. And they find a lot of things to do. Idle hands being, what do they say, the
Devil's Playground.
The Devil's Playground.
Yeah. So I think that's great that, the whole idea about starting your own studio sounds great. There's some creative people here in Chicago who also want to do the same thing, and they're mostly in the film, in the performing arts field. And the facilitator of this group, one of the things that she wants to do is get enough money to put together her own facility that can not only host the group but be a gathering place for like-minded professionals to work their craft.
Right. And if I can also bring up, not just here, but also Africa is a very budding entertainment industry place as well, in Nigeria mostly, and places like Kenya. There's a lot of animation studios opening up over there, and hopefully one day we'll be able to sync up with them and collaborate with them as well.
Well, I mean, look at this. You guys have no barriers.
Right.
I mean, even if you were going to do a first-run full feature movie, the internet allows you to collaborate from anywhere, and you guys already have an international following. You've got people who know you who are not in this country, who are just as interested as people are in this country. So carrying that model to its natural extension, not conclusion, but its extension, is something that I mean seems to be a no-brainer in terms of a future endeavor, and it's good that you're thinking about it.
Yeah, it would be a very big market that we could not ignore. I mean, when I was down there too, I noticed that they watch a lot of North American cartoons for children and that sort of thing. And like Chris was saying too, when you look at the number of studios coming out of those countries, you realize that that's a growing market. And for us to be able to make some sort of headway, make connections. I know for sure we already have a couple connections in Nairobi. We're going to be working with this one artist, and we've already worked with another artist down there as well. And you know, we definitely want to create that connection and work with them, and possibly have that as a place where we could, have a market for the kind of products we're going to be coming out with, or comics and animations.
Yeah, since you've got the website, you've got the channels and things like that, give us a little idea of what kind of feedback do you get from people? What kind of suggestions? What kinds of things do people bring to your attention about your universe and about your art?
I tell you one thing I've noticed on Facebook, a lot of people are asking about a game. I saw quite a bit of that, and then some people were, thinking if it was a cartoon, was it an animation, was it a TV show? So I think there's a lot of interest in seeing it go to that level. And, again, some people are asking about language. It seems that maybe we might look into doing a translation into another language. Based on just some of the feedback we've been getting. But most of it is encouraging. There are some people who, say some really ridiculous things, but for the most part, it's been overwhelmingly positive.
Every once in a while, we get someone that's trying to use our numbers to try to put their own product out there, and I usually have to go in there and take it off the Facebook page. But
I know. That's irritating.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you can always write it off to, the sincerest form of flattery is imitation.
Very true. That's actually one of my favorite sayings.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to go, man, that was my that was my idea.
Right.
And you do have to nip that in the bud. I mean, it's no good. It's no fun to sit there and go, wow, look at the success of John Smith over there. He took my idea and he really ran with it, and now look at him. Nobody wants to say that. And what about people who may want to join your collaborative universe, or join your speculative universe? Do you have people out there who have talked to you about partnering or collaborating or even contributing to what it is that you guys have put together?
Well, I'll say one group in particular. There's this company out in the UK called All Nights that are going to help as far as like selling the books out there in the UK.
Okay.
Because I guess there's a gap out there as well for black products, and I want to say a special thank you to Wayne Riley, because he's been very adamant about getting my work over there and getting the Chronicles of Piye over there. So thank you very much for helping promote it and putting it. He put it on his website and everything. So.
And what about that's great from the business perspective, but what about the creative perspective? Do you have people who offer up ideas for storylines, for characters, for plots, things like that? Do you get that yet?
At least not as of yet, but that's something that we'll definitely be looking into in the future, especially when we start creating more content as well. So.
It really sounds like. It sounds like almost like a fairy tale existence. You guys, you met each other, you found kindred spirits in each other, you put together something that's compelling enough that it's garnering the kind of attention that it is. If you had a wish list, if you could wish for something for the next year or two to happen, Chris, what would you be looking at? What would you like to have fall out of the sky into your lap?
In all honesty, if just as many people, like if we had like every number that we have on Facebook, if they all bought the Chronicles of Piye, that would be great. Because I mean that from then on, we'd just be able to finance ourselves and concentrate just on our own books. So.
And what about you, Richard?
I agree with Chris. I think the whole idea is just to make the sales enough where we can finance ourselves,
right?
And separate ourselves from our day jobs, and just actually make this our full-time existence in a meaningful way,
So, I mean, once that happens, once we're able to put much more time and finances into it, I mean, it's sky's the limit from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, here, we have a lot of gearheads. We have a lot of people that talk about the actual physicality, the actual tools of the trade. What kind of tools do you use for the work that you do, Chris?
Well, I have a Wacom tablet, and that's what I use to do the digital drawings for. I mean, most of the stuff I do is by hand, like the pages they're all done by hand. I'll scan them in. Maybe I'll refine them with the Wacom tablet, and then I'll do all the inking and the coloring. And I'll use, this is a little unorthodox, but I use the program Adobe Flash, which is mostly used for animation, but I use it for doing the vectorized artwork, because once something is a vector, you can size it up or size it down, and it doesn't lose any resolution. So.
And for your, I mean, you probably use some pretty standard writing tools. Is that what you got, Richard? What do you do?
Yeah, very standard writing tools at the moment. I don't really have any script writing software per se, so I'm just sort of going with Word for now. And that's what I basically use, yeah. I do a lot of research, though. I mean, for sure, part of the writing is definitely a lot of research. And I think that's just going to be a trademark of how I go about my storylines, is just research into the characters, the names, the area they're in, and really creating a very solid virtual world, so to speak. And I think that's just one thing I really want to become. Like I said before, a trademark of how I do my work is well thought out worlds.
Yeah. And when you first started doing the research, when you started moving toward the African-centric kind of stories, framework, and things like that, even where did you research that kind of information? Was it like encyclopedic? Was it Wikipedic? I mean, where did you go to kind of start figuring out the actual structure of what you were looking for?
Well, I mean, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube, people speaking about different facets of African history, but I've been reading up on it for quite some time. I read, books by guys like Chancellor Williams and Yosef Ben Yochanan, other authors like that, John G. Jackson.
Yeah, like, people like Runoko Rashidi and Dr. John Henry Clark, just reading their books and stuff like that gives you just a good basis for African history.
Exactly. And then there are lots of sites which I've collected over the years as well, which I've gone to and looked at and got a sense of where it's going to be, and, the names of the characters. Each of them have authentic African names. I tried to get people that had names with meanings to them. And, Chronicles of Piye is set in the Nile Valley, but they're going to be doing some moving around across Africa as well. That's the idea. So it's going to be a way as well to introduce it to different civilizations within Africa. I mean, you already heard of the Nok civilization, which a lot of people don't know about, which is based in northern and central Nigeria. This is a civilization that people aren't aware of, but which is, at first they kept saying it was only, at the beginning of the AD period, but now it seems that with further excavations, they know that it's going further back. I think the latest date I've seen officially is like somewhere between 250 to 500 years BC, and it probably is older than that. So there's a wealth of information out there, and like I said before, we just wanted to bring these things into our work, and even in the science fiction story I'm working on as well, there's still going to be a connection to Africa. I won't say how at the moment, but you'll see when it comes out.
What, no hints? No hints at all?
Not even the slightest glimmer of a hint.
Well, it's not like anybody would steal your idea.
Or derive something from it, as you pointed out earlier. Hell no.
Exactly. Well, you have to find. Well, you have to protect yourself, and that's one of the important things about your work. A lot of people go into it, and they'll post whatever they have. They'll just throw it up on the internet. They'll make a site, and then all of a sudden, they've lost control of their idea, and it becomes someone else's idea.
Right. I mean, we made sure before we even put one stitch of Chronicles of Piye on the line that we did the copyright first. And registered the work and everything like that. So made sure we owned it.
Exactly. Copyrighted the script, copyrighted the artwork.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you belong? You talk about copyright. Do you belong to any professional organizations that like the Writers Guild of America, those kinds of organizations that might be resources for getting some of that, helping you out with the legal structure of what you're doing? Or
I don't, but I plan on joining. I'm not in the Writers Guild, but I'm in the Graphic Artists Guild, and also I've registered in the U.S. government. So.
Yeah. What benefits do you derive from being in the Writers Guild?
Really, it's just all it is really just making sure you get paid the proper amount for doing like whatever contract work that you do.
Okay.
That's really the only benefit of it.
Don't they have an insurance plan?
No, not in the guild that I'm in. No.
All right, well, forget it then. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Richard.
No, I was going to say, I'm a member at the Directors Guild of Canada, and they cover various positions within the film industry. But I also registered the script. Not only was it copyrighted, but I also registered the script with the Writers Guild of Canada as well. So they have it on record that we have it. They've got the version of it I submitted to them. And it's there. I thought about becoming a member, and that's probably something now I will look into now.
Right, I've thought about that as well for joining the Writers Guild here in the U.S. So
yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean it is. It's a good idea. It's something that I have to do myself. I think everybody should do it because otherwise, I mean, even if you're a member, look at somebody who had a certain idea for a certain Matrix kind of movie, and and somebody takes your stuff, and it's one thing to protect things ahead of time. It's another thing to try to yank them back once somebody has stolen them.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
So a lot of people go, well, I don't really want to have to worry about that. Nobody's going to bother me about it. And yet you may have an award-winning idea which can make somebody a ton of money.
Right.
And unfortunately, if you don't dot your I's and cross your T's, that someone is someone else.
Right. No, we're both adamant about that because that's something we both had experience with, just dealing with different media production, just, making sure you protect your product before you even put it out there. So.
Yeah, and that, that's another thing. You mentioned how, Richard, you mentioned about the ramping up of the China film market. I mean, China right now is probably one of the biggest emerging capitalistic countries in terms of consumerism.
Yes, it is.
And obviously our software doesn't get bought over there; it gets stolen. As much as the Chinese film office would like to censor our films and things like that, you have to assume that if I can download any first-run movie the day it comes out, they can do the same thing in China. So you're looking at, potentially billions and billions of people, which translates obviously into billions and billions of dollars. And I think a word to the wise is that you do, think in terms of protecting yourself. Even if you have to take, $100 or $200, go talk to a lawyer about, well, hey, I got this script and I want to start sending it around. How do I protect myself from somebody just stealing the idea?
Right.
Do your due diligence. Do the things that you need to do to protect yourself. Otherwise, like I said, somebody is going to make a ton of money off of your idea, and if it's not you, it's a damn shame.
Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario that we want to avoid. Yeah, and it's a good point too because they are known for piracy. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. What happened is, at least in my opinion, is that the moment we digitized everything to make it easy to transport, DVDs, CDs, what have you, was the beginning of the end of the old business model. And if Hollywood and the music industry and Bollywood and Nollywood and Chinawood and all of these places can't figure out how to put together a good distribution model where people, the artists get paid so that they keep doing the work, we're going to see billions and billions of dollars of theft, occur until somebody figures out how to do it. I mean, obviously, copy protection doesn't work because what one person can do, another person can undo.
Yes.
Fortunately for you guys, I mean, do you have any problems at all with piracy with your stuff?
No,
that
not
you know of?
No, not that we've seen. No.
Not that we've seen, but I mean, I know that someone had mentioned the fact that they were a bit concerned about the fact that we were allowing downloads, but that's the model. That's just out there. And I mean,
and I mean, if someone did do that, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we put out is watermarked. So I mean, it'd be real easy to prove. But you know, like you said, it, you know, even that would be, you know, hell to try to go through all that. But the proof is there that we created it, because like I said, I watermark everything. So.
Well, and let's be honest, if somebody tried to sell your idea as their own at this point, you have enough notoriety, enough international notoriety that it would be damn hard for them to get away with it. It would be almost impossible for them to get away with it.
Right.
But if you do that, if you do a sci-fi movie or something like that, then I guess, you know, you're going to have to look at your distributor and see, you know, what are your protections, and essentially make sure you get enough money up front so that if nothing comes in on the back end, you just go say la vie.
Right.
Exactly.
No, because I've had that. Well, nothing bad has happened to me yet, but I always get requests from these different international film festivals that want to take like some of the films that I've done to show them in their film festival, and they just want me to send the film. I'm like, I don't know about that. Just sending my film somewhere, and I don't know where it's going. You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of people, you know, kind of shortstop that, and yet they do get some travel by saying, I will allow you to show my film, but you have to pay for me to come there so that I can be assured that I don't get ripped off.
Right.
Well, guys, you know, we are actually at the end of the show. I mean, 2 hours went by very fast. You guys, again, and I want to thank you, too, for making me look as good as you did. For those of you out there who are just tuning in or maybe listening to this as a podcast and skipping ahead and skipping to the end, like looking at the last page of a book before you read the first page, this is the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, and it is a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. We've been, this is the May 17th, 2013 edition. We've been talking to Richard Gaskin and, am I saying that right, Richard?
That's correct. Nope.
Okay, and Chris Miller. Chris, am I saying that right? It is Chris?
Yes, it is, Chris Miller.
Okay, good. And they are the creators of the Chronicles of Piye, Chronicles, spelled like Chronicles. If you don't know it, look it up, of Piye, Piye.com. You can also catch up with some of Chris's work at chriscrazyhouse.com. And there's links to their YouTube channels and everything else out there. As I know that our good Administrator Jarvis is not able to come in and thank everybody, I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you two very, very much for showing up. I mean, this has been great. You had a lot to give our people, and you know, and I'm not joking when I say I do want to get hold of you later, talk to you about what you do. Maybe we'll see you online. Okay. And so thank you both for being here. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on the show. Yeah. And
we'll try. You know what? We'll probably check in with you maybe 6 months down the road, maybe a little bit further down the road. If either of you are going to go to any Comic Cons or anything like that, please go to BlackScienceFictionSociety.com and put it up on the events calendar so people who may want to run into you can meet you, at least know that you're going to be there. And so on behalf of our administrator, on behalf of all of our guests, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I would like to ask everybody to remind your friends that this show is every Friday about 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and then you could figure out what time zone you're in, and that to tell your friends if they've got an affinity for Black science fiction, comics, whatever, or even the stuff that Richard and Chris does, and want to look at the show and listen to the show for a podcast. So on behalf of everybody else, I want to thank you guys, and I think we'll call it a night. For those of you who are still around, who are dialed in, hang around after the recording stops, and then we have a little after party. Can you guys hang around for a little while, Richard, Chris?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, great.
No problem. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. And Jarvis, go ahead and take it away. Just hang on.
Yep.
Okay.
Ooh, wait a minute. He can't stop the recording because he can't dial in. He said just a moment. I'm guessing all of this is going to be edited out in post-production. That's what I'm guessing, guys.
Fix it in post, right? Isn't that what they say? Fix it in post.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Oh, man. So have either of you done anything other than, well, I mean, I'm sure, Richard, you've done stuff for TV, movies, whatever, on behalf of your, the people you work for. Have you done anything on your own yet in terms of movies, animation, anything like that?
Not yet, no.
How about you, Chris?
I've done 2 short animated films. I did one called Monster on My Mind, and I also did another one called Amut's Angel.
Oh, man, we should have talked about that. I'm sorry I didn't ask you that
that's
earlier.
Okay. They can find it. They'll see it all on the website. So.
Okay. All right, take us out here, Jarvis.